What would you do if a desperate stranger knocked on your door in the middle of a torrential storm? For Liam Callahan, a single dad barely keeping his head above water, that question wasn't a hypothetical. It was a shivering, rain-soaked girl standing on his doorstep. He had every reason to say no. A daughter to protect, a life already hanging by a thread. But he said yes. It was a simple act of kindness, a choice made in a heartbeat. He had no way of knowing that this single decision would not only unravel his entire world, but also lead him to a truth that money can't buy, in a future he never dared to dream of. This is the story of how one night of charity forged an unbreakable bond between two worlds that never should have met. The rain didn't just fall, it assaulted the city of Seattle. It hammered against the thin glass of Liam Callahan's third-floor apartment window, each drop a tiny fist drumming a rhythm of relentless misery. Inside, the world was small and warm, a pocket of defiance against the storm. The air smelled of tomato soup and grilled cheese, the simple, comforting scent of survival. Liam watched his 7-year-old daughter, Lily, carefully coloring in a picture of a unicorn. Her tongue was poked out in concentration, her brow furrowed. She was the center of his universe, the tiny sun his weary planet orbited. Everything he did, from the grueling 12-hour shifts at the construction site to the side jobs fixing furniture for neighbors, was for her. It was to keep this small, warm world intact. Their life was a tightrope walk over a chasm of debt and insecurity. His wife, Sarah, had been taken by a swift and merciless illness 2 years ago, leaving behind a mountain of medical bills and a hole in their lives that Liam feared would never be filled. He was just 34, but some mornings he felt ancient, the weight of his responsibilities pressing down on his broad shoulders. "Daddy," Lily said without looking up, "can we have a real birthday cake for my birthday next week, with pink frosting?" Liam's heart did a familiar, painful squeeze. A simple birthday cake from the bakery felt like a luxury item. "I'll see what I can do, sweet pea," he said, forcing a smile into his voice. "Maybe I can bake one. We'll make it the pinkest cake in the whole world." Lily beamed, satisfied with the promise. It was in that moment, the moment of her pure, unadulterated joy, that the knock came. It wasn't a loud knock. It was timid, almost lost in the symphony of the storm. Liam frowned. Nobody ever came to their door this late, especially not in weather like this. He motioned for Lily to stay put, his body instinctively moving between her and the door. He peered through the peephole, but the lens was blurred with condensation and rainwater. All he could make out was a slender, indistinct shape. He hesitated. The city was full of stories, warnings from other parents about opening the door to strangers. But then the knock came again, softer this time, followed by a sound that might have been a sob. It was a sound of pure desperation. Against his better judgment, he unlatched the deadbolt and opened the door a crack, the safety chain still in place. The girl standing in the hallway couldn't have been more than 19 or 20. She was soaked to the bone, her dark hair plastered to her face, her trendy-looking jacket, which was probably expensive before the deluge, ruined. She was shivering violently, her lips tinged with blue. But it was her eyes that struck him. They were wide and terrified, like a frightened deer caught in headlights. "Please," she stammered, her voice trembling. I'm lost. My phone is dead. I need to get out of the storm for a minute. I can pay you." Liam's internal alarms were ringing. A young woman, alone, offering money. It could be a scam, a trap. But looking at her, he didn't see a predator. He saw a kid in trouble, a kid not much older than the teenagers he saw hanging around the park. "I don't want your money," he said, his voice gruff but not unkind. "Where are your parents?" "We had a fight," she mumbled, hugging herself. "I ran out. I was stupid. I didn't grab my wallet, just my phone, and it died. Please, sir, I won't cause any trouble. Just until the rain lets up." He looked from her drenched form back to Lily, who was now watching with wide, curious eyes from the safety of the living room. His daughter was his vulnerability, his reason to be cautious. But she was also his moral compass. What kind of father would he be if he taught his daughter to turn her back on someone so clearly in need? Sarah would have opened the door without a second thought. With a heavy sigh that seemed to carry the weight of the entire day, he unhooked the chain. All right, get in before you catch your death. But just for a little while, I have a daughter here." The girl practically stumbled inside, dripping a puddle onto the worn linoleum of his entryway. "Thank you," she whispered, her relief palpable. "Thank you so much. My name is Clara." "Liam," he replied curtly. He grabbed a threadbare towel from the linen closet. "Here, dry yourself off. I can make you some tea." As she took the towel, her hand brushed his, and he was startled by how cold her skin was. He saw her eyes dart around the small apartment, taking in the patched-up sofa, the stack of bills on the small kitchen counter held down by a salt shaker, the crayon drawings taped to the walls. He felt a pang of self-consciousness. To her, this must look like a hovel. "I'll be right back," he said, turning toward the kitchen. He didn't see the look on Clara's face as she watched him go. A look not of judgment, but of something else entirely, a profound and unsettling curiosity. She had stepped out of a storm and into a world she never knew existed, and in the center of it was a tired man and his little girl, unknowingly offering sanctuary to one of the wealthiest young women in the country. Clara Sterling had never known a moment of genuine want in her life. Her world was one of sprawling mansions, chauffeured cars, and a future meticulously planned out for her by her mother, the formidable Eleanor Sterling, CEO of Sterling Enterprises. Their home was a masterpiece of cold, minimalist architecture, all glass, steel, and muted colors. It was beautiful, sterile, and silent, especially since her father had passed away 5 years prior. Warmth was a commodity scarcer than a flawed diamond. Now, standing in Liam Callahan's tiny apartment, she was enveloped by it. It wasn't the heat from the old radiator hissing in the corner. It was something more fundamental. It was in the way Lily patted over and shyly offered her a slightly squashed cookie. It was in the aroma of the cheap black tea Liam brewed, steam rising from a chipped ceramic mug. It was in the quiet, unspoken rhythm of a father and daughter who had only each other. "Thank you," Clara said, her voice still a little shaky as she accepted the mug. The heat seeped into her frozen fingers, a small miracle of comfort. "Don't mention it," Liam said, leaning against the counter. He watched her with a guarded expression, the protective father still outweighing the good Samaritan. "You said you had a fight with your folks?" Clara nodded, looking down into her tea. The argument felt a lifetime away now. It had been about the internship. Her mother had, without consultation, secured her a prestigious summer position in Sterling Enterprises' finance department. Clara, an aspiring artist who secretly volunteered at a youth art shelter, had wanted to spend her summer teaching. "You're not even listening to me, Clara." Eleanor's voice had been sharp, cutting. "This is your future. Art is a hobby. Sterling Enterprises is your birthright, your responsibility." "It's your company, Mom, not mine," Clara had shot back, her frustration boiling over. "Dad would have understood." That had been the fatal blow. Mentioning her father was a line she knew she shouldn't cross. Eleanor's face had hardened into an impenetrable mask of grief and anger. "Your father would have wanted me to protect you, and that is what I am doing. You will be at that internship on Monday." In a fit of defiant, youthful rage, Clara had grabbed her jacket and stormed out, leaving her purse, her wallet, and her security detail behind. She had just wanted to walk, to breathe, to escape the gilded cage. But the city and the storm had quickly shown her how terribly naive she was. "It was about my future," Clara said to Liam, her voice small. "My mom, she has it all planned out. I just want to choose for myself." Liam nodded slowly, a flicker of understanding in his tired eyes. Parents just want to keep their kids safe. Sometimes they hold on a little too tight. He glanced over at Lily, who had fallen asleep on the sofa, her unicorn drawing clutched in her hand. "But a kid's got to find their own way eventually." There was a profound, simple wisdom in his words that resonated more deeply with Clara than any of the expensive therapy sessions her mother had insisted upon. Liam offered her the sofa for the night. "It's not much, but it's dry," he said. He gave her a spare t-shirt and a pair of worn sweatpants to sleep in. They were old and faded, but they were clean and smelled faintly of laundry soap. As she changed in the tiny bathroom, she caught a glimpse of herself in the mirror. With her matted hair and borrowed clothes, she was unrecognizable. She was no longer Clara Sterling, the heiress. She was just Clara. For the first time, it didn't feel terrifying. It felt freeing. Lying on the lumpy sofa, covered by a thin but warm quilt that smelled of home, Clara couldn't sleep. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the gentle sound of Liam's breathing from the other room, where he'd taken the floor next to Lily's bed. She thought of her own cavernous, silent bedroom. She thought of how Liam had split his last grilled cheese sandwich to give her a piece, refusing to let her go hungry. She thought of the hand-carved wooden bird sitting on the windowsill, a small, beautiful thing he'd told her he made for Lily. This man who had so little had given so freely. Meanwhile, her mother, who had everything, gave only what came with strings attached. A wave of guilt washed over her. Her mother must be frantic. Eleanor Sterling did not handle unpredictability well. She would have the entire city's police force on high alert. The name Sterling opened every door and commanded immediate action. A search was undoubtedly underway. Clara knew she had to leave in the morning. She had to end this before her world crashed into Liam's and shattered his fragile peace. Before she could repay his kindness, she had to get away from him. But as she drifted off to sleep, to the sound of the rain finally softening to a gentle patter, she felt a strange, aching desire to stay in this small, warm apartment just a little longer. Panic was a foreign emotion to Eleanor Sterling. She was a woman who navigated billion-dollar mergers and hostile takeovers with the cool precision of a surgeon. But as the hours stretched into a rainy black night, panic had begun its icy creep into her veins. Her daughter Clara was gone. The fight echoed in her mind, her own harsh words mingling with Clara's desperate plea for independence. She sat in the command center she had set up in her penthouse office, overlooking the rain-lashed city. The room was buzzing with the quiet efficiency of wealth in motion. Her head of security, a stern ex-federal agent named Marcus Davies, stood before a bank of monitors displaying security footage and GPS trackers. Her phone's last ping was at 7:14 p.m. near the waterfront. Then it went dead, Davies reported, his voice a low, professional hum. No activity on her credit cards or social media. We've alerted the Seattle PD, but discreetly. Commissioner Phillips is handling it personally. Discretion is no longer the priority, Marcus, Eleanor said, her voice dangerously calm. Find my daughter. Use every resource. I want every police officer, every private detective, every camera in this city focused on one thing, finding Clara. Eleanor stared at a framed photo on her desk. It was of her and her late husband, Richard, with a 5-year-old Clara between them. Richard had been the heart of their family, the one who tempered her ambition with warmth and laughter. He had adored Clara's artistic spirit. Since his death, Eleanor felt she had to be both mother and father, both the nurturer and the protector. But in her fear of losing Clara to the world, as she had lost Richard, she had only succeeded in pushing her away. Now the world had her, and Eleanor was terrified of what it might do. There's something else, Mrs. Sterling, Davies said, his expression grim. The media is getting wind of it. A source at the SPD must have leaked it. The story is starting to trend. Billionaire heiress Clara Sterling missing. Eleanor's blood ran cold. This changed everything. It turned her daughter from a missing person into a target. Every criminal in the city would now be looking for her. The panic she had been holding at bay broke through, raw and visceral. Find her, she whispered, her voice cracking for the first time. Just find her. Miles away, in the quiet warmth of Liam's apartment, a different kind of search was taking place. The morning sun streamed through the window, painting stripes of light across the floor. The storm had passed. Clara awoke to the smell of coffee and the sound of quiet activity. Liam was in the kitchen, packing a small lunchbox. Lily sat at the small table, meticulously buttering a piece of toast. The scene was so domestic, so normal, it made Clara's chest ache. Morning, Liam said, nodding at her. He looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes, and she realized he must have barely slept on the floor. There's coffee and toast. Thank you, Clara said, her voice thick with sleep. She sat down opposite Lily, who gave her a shy smile. Daddy's a carpenter, Lily announced proudly. He builds things. Is that right? Clara asked, looking at Liam. He shrugged, a faint blush on his cheeks. I'm a handyman mostly, on a construction crew. The carving, that's just a hobby. He gestured with his head toward the wooden bird on the windowsill. Not much call for that these days. Clara looked at the bird again. The detail was exquisite, the lines smooth and full of life. It wasn't the work of a hobbyist, it was the work of an artist. She saw his work boots by the door, worn and cracked. She saw the set of old, well-used tools in a battered box in the corner. He had immense talent but lacked the resources to do anything with it. It was then that she saw the television, which was on with the volume turned down low. A local news channel was on, and a picture of her face filled the screen. The headline beneath it read, "Fears Grow for Missing Heiress Clara Sterling." Clara's heart leaped into her throat. She saw her mother's official photograph next to hers, her expression steely and determined. The news anchor was talking in grave tones, words like foul play and possible kidnapping hanging in the air. They thought she'd been abducted. The piece of toast in her hand suddenly felt like a lead weight. She looked at Liam, who was blissfully unaware, telling Lily to finish her breakfast. She looked at this small, peaceful sanctuary he had provided, and she realized with a sickening jolt that she had brought a ticking bomb into his home. If she were found here, what would they think? A poor man, a vulnerable, wealthy young woman. The police, her mother's security, they would tear his life apart. They wouldn't see a good Samaritan. They would see an opportunist, a criminal. She had to get out, now, before he left for work. "Liam," she said, her voice suddenly urgent, "I need to go. Thank you for everything. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it." Liam looked surprised. "Are you sure? The city's a big place to be lost in. I can help you find a bus station or something after I drop Lily at school." "No, I can't," she insisted, standing up. I've imposed enough. I'll be fine." He looked at her, a question in his eyes, but he didn't push. He simply nodded. "Okay, be safe out there." As she put on her still damp clothes, a desperate plan formed in her mind. She couldn't leave him with nothing. It felt wrong. In her jacket pocket, her fingers closed around the one piece of jewelry she always wore, a simple, elegant platinum bracelet her father had given her. It was understated, but it was worth a small fortune. While Liam was in the other room getting Lily's backpack, Clara moved quickly. She pulled the bracelet off and tucked it under the edge of the sofa cushion where she'd slept. He would find it. He could sell it. It wasn't much, but it could help him. Maybe buy Lily that pink birthday cake and 100 more. She scribbled a hasty note on a napkin. "Thank you for everything. Use this to help your daughter," and left it beside the bracelet. Then, with one last, guilt-ridden look at the man who had shown her more kindness than she'd ever known, she slipped out the door and disappeared into the morning light, unaware that her well-intentioned gift was about to become the very evidence that would condemn him. Liam found the bracelet an hour after he got back from dropping Lily at school. He was tidying up before heading to a small side job, repairing a rickety staircase for an elderly neighbor, when he plumped the cushions on the sofa. His fingers brushed against something cool and heavy. Puzzled, he reached under the cushion and pulled out the platinum bracelet. It was simple, elegant, and felt impossibly heavy in his calloused hand. He didn't know much about jewelry, but he knew this was real. This was expensive. Then he saw the napkin, the hastily scrawled note. "Thank you for everything. Use this to help your daughter." A cold dread settled in his stomach. Clara. She had left it for him. He understood the gesture. She had seen their struggle, his worn-out furniture, the bills on the counter. She had tried to pay him for his kindness, but this wasn't payment. This was a complication, a dangerous one. He couldn't accept it. It felt wrong, like charity tainted with pity. More than that, it felt like trouble. He had no idea who she really was, but a girl who could casually leave behind a piece of jewelry likely worth more than his car was not someone whose world he wanted to be a part of. He pocketed the bracelet and the note, his mind racing. He had to find her, give it back. But how? He didn't even know her last name. He decided he would take it to the police station after his job. He'd file a found property report. It was the only clean right thing to do. He never got the chance. He was halfway through fixing the creaky fifth step of Mrs. Gable's staircase when he heard the sirens. They grew louder and louder, culminating in a screech of tires directly outside the apartment building. Liam's head shot up. Police. That was never a good sign in this neighborhood. He heard heavy footsteps pounding up the stairs. A loud, authoritative knock rattled his apartment door. It wasn't his door, but the sound vibrated through the floorboards. Then he heard Mrs. Gable's shaky voice, followed by another, sharper voice asking questions. His heart began to pound. He wiped his sweaty hands on his jeans and walked out onto the landing. Two uniformed police officers stood outside his door. Behind them stood a man in a sharp suit, Marcus Davies, and a woman whose face was etched with a terrifying combination of anxiety and iron-willed fury. It was the woman from the news, Clara's mother. "Are you Liam Callahan?" The woman, Eleanor Sterling, demanded. Her voice was like chips of ice. "Yes," Liam said, his throat suddenly dry. "What's this about?" "We have reason to believe you know the whereabouts of my daughter." "Clara Sterling," Eleanor said, her eyes scanning him from head to toe, her expression a mixture of disgust and suspicion. She took in his work-dusted clothes, the modest apartment building, and her face hardened. "Clara?" Liam was stunned. "She was here. She left this morning. I don't know where she went." "He's lying," Eleanor snapped at Davies. "Search his apartment." "Ma'am, we need a warrant for that," one of the officers said calmly. "Get one," she commanded. "My daughter, a 19-year-old girl, was in this man's apartment. He lives alone with a child." "What am I supposed to think?" The accusation hung in the air, vile and suffocating. Liam felt the blood drain from his face. "Hold on," he said, his voice shaking with a mixture of fear and anger. "It wasn't like that. She was in trouble, caught in the storm. I gave her a place to stay. That's it. She was safe here." "Safe?" Eleanor let out a short, incredulous laugh. "Men like you are never safe. You saw an opportunity, a vulnerable girl." "Ma'am, please," the officer interjected, trying to de-escalate the situation. But Liam, propelled by a righteous fury, stepped forward. "You don't know anything about me. Your daughter needed help, and I helped her. It's what decent people do." His protest was cut short as his phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out. It was a news alert. The headline made his stomach clench. "Police investigating person of interest in Sterling heiress disappearance. Source suggests a construction worker from the Rainier Valley district." They were already building a narrative. They were painting him as a predator. "Mr. Callahan," the officer said, his tone now official and cold, "we're going to have to ask you to come down to the station to answer some questions, and we'll need you to empty your pockets." Defeated, knowing protest was futile, Liam slowly reached into his pockets. He pulled out his keys, his wallet, and finally, the platinum bracelet. It landed in the officer's gloved hand with a soft clink. Eleanor Sterling's eyes locked onto it. A strangled gasp escaped her lips. "That's it," she whispered, her voice trembling with rage and what looked like a perverse sense of vindication. That was her father's gift to her. He gave it to her on her 16th birthday. She looked at Liam, her eyes blazing with hatred. "You didn't just take my daughter, you robbed her." Marcus Davies stepped forward, his expression grim. "Liam Callahan, you are under arrest on suspicion of kidnapping and robbery." The world tilted on its axis. As the cold metal of the handcuffs clicked around his wrists, Liam's only thought was of Lily. Who would pick her up from school? Who would make her dinner? Through the haze of his own terror, he saw the triumphant, pain-filled eyes of the most powerful woman in the city, and he knew he was just a bug about to be crushed under her heel. He was innocent, but in that moment, his innocence didn't matter at all. Clara had found her way to the only place she felt remotely safe, the Sojourners Art Collective, a grimy but vibrant warehouse space where she volunteered under the pseudonym Chloe. Nobody here knew she was a Sterling. Here, she was just a talented painter with a knack for helping troubled kids express themselves. Her friend, a streetwise artist named Maya, had given her a spare set of clothes and a couch to crash on, no questions asked. For a few hours, Clara allowed herself to breathe. She helped Maya prep canvases, the familiar smell of turpentine and oil paint calming her frayed nerves. She was disconnected, off the grid, but the feeling of unease lingered. She had run away to prove a point about her own life, but she couldn't shake the feeling that her selfish act would have unforeseen consequences. It was Maya who shattered her temporary peace. "Whoa, Chloe, you see this?" she said, holding up her phone. "They practically have the whole state looking for that missing rich girl. The news is going crazy." Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. What are they saying? Latest update says they have a person of interest in custody. Some construction worker from the South End says he had some of her jewelry on him. Man, the nerve of some people. Poor girl. The world went silent. All Clara could hear was a roaring in her ears. A construction worker. From the South End. No, it couldn't be. She snatched the phone from Maya's hand. The screen showed a blurred photo of a man in handcuffs being led from an apartment building. His head was down, but she knew those broad shoulders, that worn flannel shirt. It was Liam. The headline screamed, "Suspect in Sterling kidnapping arrested." A wave of nausea and horror washed over her. The jewelry, the bracelet, her stupid, thoughtless, well-intentioned gift. It wasn't a thank you. It was a noose, and she had placed it around his neck. "Oh my God," she breathed, her hands shaking. "Oh my God, Maya, what have I done?" Maya looked at her, confused. "What are you talking about?" There was no more time for lies or pseudonyms. "That girl," Clara said, her voice cracking, "the missing heiress, that's me. And that man, he didn't kidnap me. He saved me." The story tumbled out of her in a frantic, desperate torrent. The fight, running away, the storm, Liam's kindness, the night in his apartment, the bracelet she left behind. Maya listened, her eyes growing wider with every word. "My mother did this," Clara finished, tears of rage and guilt streaming down her face. "She's so blinded by her fear and her money that she can't see a good person when one is staring her in the face. She's destroying an innocent man's life." "You have to fix this, Clara," Maya said, her voice firm. "Right now." Clara didn't need to be told. She was already moving, fueled by a surge of adrenaline and a fury she had never felt before. This was no longer about an internship or her future. This was about justice. It was about Liam and his little girl, Lily. What would happen to her if her father was sent to prison? She used Maya's phone to call the one number she knew would bypass all security and go straight to the source. "Where are you?" Eleanor Sterling's voice was strained, exhausted, but tinged with the relief of a battle won. "It doesn't matter where I am," Clara said, her own voice cold and sharp, an echo of her mother's. "What matters is what you've done. I just saw the news. You have to let him go." "Clara, oh, thank God. Are you all right? Are you hurt? Where is he?" "He is an innocent man," Clara shouted into the phone, her voice breaking. "He didn't hurt me. He helped me. I was lost in the storm and he took me in. He gave me food and shelter and he asked for nothing. Do you hear me? Nothing." There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. "But the bracelet, Clara. He had your father's bracelet." "I left it for him," she cried, the confession tearing from her throat. "I left it because he was too proud to take any money. I wanted to thank him. I wanted to help him. And you, with all your power and all your suspicion, you twisted it into something ugly and false. You saw a poor man, and you immediately assumed the worst." The silence stretched, thick with the weight of Clara's accusation. For the first time in her life, she had seized control. She was no longer the petulant child or the compliant daughter. She was a force defending an innocent man against her mother's blind prejudice. "You will go down to that police station," Clara commanded, her voice shaking but resolute. "You will tell them the truth. You will clear his name, and you will get him released. If you don't, I swear to you, I will walk into the office of the Seattle Times myself, and I will tell every reporter in this city the full story. I will tell them how the great Eleanor Sterling was so quick to condemn a working-class father that she nearly sent an innocent man to jail. Your choice, Mom." She didn't wait for a reply. She ended the call, her body trembling. She had just declared war on her own mother. But as she stood there in the dusty art studio, she had never felt more certain or more like her own person in her entire life. The fluorescent lights of the police station interrogation room hummed, a monotonous sound that grated on Liam's already shattered nerves. He had been there for hours, repeating the same story to a rotation of detectives. They didn't believe him. The evidence was stacked against him. A missing heiress, a man of no means, a priceless piece of jewelry. The story wrote itself. He wasn't worried about himself anymore. He was consumed with a terrifying, helpless dread for Lily. He had managed one phone call to Mrs. Gable, his elderly neighbor, begging her to pick Lily up from school, and keep her for the night. He'd tried to sound calm, but his voice had betrayed him. Lily would be scared. She would be wondering where her daddy was. The thought was a physical pain, sharper than any fear for his own future. The door to the interrogation room opened. Liam looked up, expecting another detective. Instead, it was Eleanor Sterling. She looked different. The ironclad fury was gone, replaced by an expression he couldn't quite read, a mixture of exhaustion, shame, and something else, uncertainty. She stood there for a moment, her expensive suit looking out of place in the grim, sterile room. "They're releasing you," she said, her voice quiet, stripped of its earlier arrogance. "All charges are being dropped." Liam stared at her, speechless. Relief washed over him, so potent it almost made him dizzy, but it was immediately followed by a wave of cold anger. "Just like that," he said, his voice raspy. "You snap your fingers, and my life is ruined. You snap them again, and it's all supposed to be fine?" Eleanor flinched. She deserved it. "I spoke to Clara," she admitted, her gaze falling to the floor. "She told me everything. That you were kind to her, that you protected her, and that she left the bracelet for you as a gift." She looked up, and for the first time Liam saw not a corporate titan, but a mother who had been terrified out of her mind. "I was wrong. What I did, what I accused you of, it was inexcusable. I am truly, deeply sorry." Sorry. The word felt small and inadequate to cover the chasm of what he had just been through. An apology wouldn't erase the memory of handcuffs on his wrists or the terror of thinking he would never see his daughter again. "Your apology doesn't change the fact that my picture is all over the news," Liam said, his voice hard. "To my neighbors, to my boss, to my daughter's school, I'm the man who was arrested for kidnapping. How do I fix that?" "I will fix it," Eleanor said, her voice regaining a sliver of its usual command. But this time it was focused on a solution, not a condemnation. "I will issue a public statement. My corporation's PR department will work around the clock. We will state, unequivocally, that you are a hero who came to my daughter's aid. We will paint you as the good Samaritan you are. By tomorrow, your name will be cleared." Liam was silent. It was more than he expected. "That's not all," she continued, taking a hesitant step closer. "An apology is not enough. I know that. I would like to make amends. To you and your daughter." Liam stiffened. "I don't want your money." "I know," Eleanor said quickly. "Clara told me you refused her offers. She also told me something else. She told me you're an artist." The word surprised him. He was a handyman, a laborer. No one had called him an artist in years. "I saw the bird you carved for your daughter," Eleanor said. "Clara described it to me. The Sterling Foundation, our company's philanthropic arm, is breaking ground on a new youth and community center in your neighborhood next month. It's a multi-million-dollar project." She paused, gauging his reaction. "The plans call for a central feature, a large carved wooden art installation in the main atrium. We also need a workshop director to run a vocational program, teaching woodworking to at-risk youth. The position comes with a full-time salary, benefits, and a housing stipend." She looked him directly in the eye. "The job is yours, Mr. Callahan, if you want it. It's not a handout. It's an offer of employment to a craftsman whose work I have been told is exceptional. Your first commission will be the atrium installation." Liam was floored. It was an opportunity beyond his wildest dreams, a chance to do what he loved, to create, not just repair, a steady salary, benefits, a better home for Lily. It was a lifeline, a ladder out of the pit he had been stuck in for so long. He looked at this powerful, complicated woman. She had almost destroyed him with her prejudice, and now she was offering him a new beginning. He saw the genuine remorse in her eyes, the desperate need to atone. It wasn't just about clearing her conscience. It was about fixing what she had broken. For the first time since the ordeal began, the anger in his chest began to recede, replaced by a cautious, fragile flicker of hope. "I'll have to think about it," he said, his pride still intact. Eleanor nodded, accepting his answer. "Of course, my assistant will be in touch with a formal offer." She turned to leave, then hesitated at the door. "Mr. Callahan, Liam." For what it's worth, thank you for keeping my daughter safe." With that, she was gone, leaving Liam alone in the humming silence, the world outside waiting to be faced. But now, for the first time in a very long time, it looked a little less like a threat and a little more like a promise. 6 months later, the city of Seattle was bathed in the crisp golden light of late autumn. The relentless, punishing rain of that fateful night felt like a memory from another lifetime, a dramatic prologue to a story that had been completely and beautifully rewritten. The most tangible evidence of this new chapter stood as a beacon of hope in the Rainier Valley neighborhood, the Sterling Community Center. It was not a cold monument to wealth, but a living, breathing building of glass, warm cedar, and brushed steel, architecturally designed to let the light pour in from every angle. It hummed with the vibrant, layered sounds of a community reborn. The rhythmic squeak of sneakers in the gymnasium, the joyful cacophony of children in the daycare, the quiet rustle of pages in the sun-drenched library, and from its very heart, the creative, purposeful pulse of the woodworking shop. At the center of that shop, Liam Callahan moved with an assurance that was new, yet seemed as if he'd possessed it forever. The weary, haunted look that had shadowed his eyes for years, a permanent fixture of his grief and financial anxiety, had been replaced by the focused, confident calm of a man living his purpose. His shoulders, which had once been perpetually hunched under an invisible weight, were now broad and relaxed. Dusted in a fine layer of sweet-smelling pine sawdust, he wore a supple leather apron over a simple flannel shirt, a carpenter's pencil tucked behind his ear. He was leaning over a workbench, guiding the hands of a lanky 17-year-old named Leo, a boy who, just a few months ago, had been on a fast track to dropping out of school and into serious trouble. They were working on a complex dovetail joint for a cedar chest. "Easy does it, Leo," Liam said, his voice a low, patient rumble. "You see how the pins and tails have to fit perfectly? There's no forcing it. You have to be precise. You have to respect the wood, understand its limits, and then work with them." He tapped the joint. "It's the tightest, strongest joint there is because the pieces support each other. They lock together. It's about connection, not just force." Leo, whose face was usually a mask of sullen indifference to the world, was a study in fierce concentration. He nodded, carefully aligning the pieces. Under Liam's mentorship, he was discovering not only a skill, but a sense of self-worth that had been buried under years of neglect and anger. Liam wasn't just teaching these kids a trade. He was teaching them patience, foresight, and the profound grounding pride of creating something beautiful and lasting with their own hands. Across the sprawling campus of the center, another equally remarkable transformation was quietly taking place. In the sunlit library, Eleanor Sterling sat in a small chair, surrounded by a semicircle of rapt 5-year-olds. The severe, intimidating armor of the CEO, the power suits, the icy demeanor, was gone. Today she wore soft wool trousers and a cashmere sweater, a pair of reading glasses perched on her nose. She was reading a story about a lost bear finding its way home, her voice once used to command boardrooms and intimidate rivals, now gentle and expressive, rising and falling with the drum of the tale. A little girl with pigtails had crawled into her lap, and Eleanor, without breaking her rhythm, had simply wrapped a comforting arm around her. She was no longer just a benefactor. She was a part of the fabric of this place, stitching her own penance and finding a new purpose in the simple act of being present. Later that afternoon, the workshop door swung open. It was Clara, her hands smudged with charcoal, a bright, genuine smile lighting up her face. "Don't let me interrupt the master and his apprentice," she teased, her eyes twinkling. Liam smiled back. "Just finishing up." "Leo, that's perfect. Clean it up and call it a day. Great work." As Leo began sweeping up, Clara leaned against a workbench. "I came to see you before the chaos of my own class begins. How are you, Liam?" "Really?" The question was sincere. Their relationship had settled into a comfortable, sibling-like bond. He was the steady older brother she'd never had, and she was the bright spark of creativity that reminded him of life's possibilities. "I'm good, Clara," he said, and the simple words held a universe of meaning. "I wake up in the morning and I'm not scared. I don't think I realized how much fear I was carrying until it was gone. He looked around the workshop, at the tools hanging neatly on the walls, at the scent of fresh cut wood. Thank you, not just for all this, but for running away that night. Clara laughed, a real unburdened sound. Definitely the most reckless and the best decision I ever made. You showed me what a real home felt like. It gave me the courage to demand one for myself, emotionally speaking. Just then the door opened again, and Lily skipped in, followed by Eleanor. Daddy, Grandma Eleanor showed me a book with a real unicorn in it, a narwhal. The casual title, Grandma Eleanor, had started a month ago, a slip of Lily's tongue that had made Eleanor's eyes well up. Now, it was simply a fact. We came to escort the birthday girl's father home, Eleanor said, her smile warm and genuine. She looked from Liam to Clara, a quiet pride in her eyes. She had lost a corporate heir and gained a daughter, a transformation that was worth more than any stock price. As they walked out, they passed through the atrium. Liam paused, as he often did, before his sculpture. The afternoon sun streamed through the skylight, illuminating the great wooden oak tree, making the grain glow like embers. I still can't believe you made that, Clara whispered, her artist's eye taking in the intricate details. It represents this place, Liam said quietly, his gaze fixed on the branches. Deep roots, a strong core, and a whole lot of different branches reaching for the same light. It's shelter. He glanced at Eleanor, and a silent, profound understanding passed between them. They had both found shelter here. The birthday party at Liam's new house was nothing like the galas Eleanor used to host, and it was infinitely better for it. The small living room was filled with the happy noise of children and the murmur of adult conversation. Handmade paper chains hung from the ceiling, and the air smelled of pizza and the enormous, shimmering pink cake that sat on the kitchen counter. Mrs. Gable was deep in conversation with Eleanor about rose bushes, two women from opposite ends of the city finding common ground in gardening, their laughter mingling. After the singing and the chaotic blowing out of 8 candles, it was time for gifts. Eleanor watched with a soft expression as Lily tore open presents from her friends. When it was her turn, she handed Lily a beautifully wrapped flat box. Inside, nestled in velvet, was not a toy or a piece of jewelry, but a professional-grade set of watercolor paints, fine brushes, and thick, textured paper. For a true artist, Eleanor said, her eyes meeting Clara's. It was an apology and a promise all in one, an acknowledgement of her past mistakes, and a vow to nurture the creative sparks in her family, not extinguish them. Then came Liam's gift. He presented Lily with a small, intricately carved wooden box. It was polished maple, so smooth it felt like silk, with her name and a delicate sleeping unicorn carved into the lid. He opened it, and a tiny sweet melody began to play, each note tinkling with pure love. You are my sunshine. Lily's eyes, wide with wonder, filled with happy tears as she launched herself into his arms. I love it, Daddy. It's the best thing ever. He held her tight, the solid, real warmth of her, a world away from the cold fear that had once been his constant companion. Later, as the evening settled and a cool breeze drifted in, Liam and Eleanor found themselves on the back porch, watching the fireflies begin their nightly dance. The sound of Clara leading a final riotous game of tag faded into the background. She's so happy, Liam, Eleanor said, her voice soft in the twilight. You're a wonderful father. Sarah would be so proud. He was taken aback that she used his late wife's name. They had spoken of their past in careful, measured tones before, but this felt different. I try to be, he said, his throat tight. She was the one who was good at all this. The joy, the laughter. I was just the steady, quiet one. Richard was like that too, Eleanor confided, her gaze distant. My husband. He was the heart of our family. I was the ambition. After he died, I thought I had to be both. I thought security, money, control. That was how I could protect Clara. I almost smothered her with it. She turned to him, her eyes clear and filled with a raw honesty. He would have loved what she's doing at the center. He always believed in her art. I was too afraid to. Fear makes us do stupid things, Liam agreed, thinking of his own terror in that interrogation room. It can blind you to the good right in front of you. You weren't blinded, she stated simply. On a night when you had every reason to be cynical, to protect yourself and your daughter from a world that had taken so much from you, you chose kindness. I don't think I'll ever forget that. He looked at her then, at this powerful, complicated woman who had nearly destroyed him, and then in turn had saved him. The barriers between them, of class, of experience, of pain, seemed to dissolve in the quiet dark. There was just a man and a woman, two lonely souls who had found an unlikely harbor in each other's orbit. He didn't know what the future held, if this quiet respect would ever blossom into something more. But as he looked through the window at his laughing daughter, at Clara chasing after her like a beloved big sister, and at the warm, welcoming light spilling out from the home he had built, he knew he was no longer walking his path alone. He had let a stranger in on a stormy night, a single act of grace that had unleashed chaos and terror. But from the ashes of that ordeal, a new world had been forged, a world built not on the shaky ground of survival, but on the solid, unshakable foundation of forgiveness, community, and a second chance he never thought he'd have. And it was more beautiful than anything he could have ever dared to imagine. The story of Liam and Clara is a powerful reminder that our world is not defined by the walls we build between us, but by the bridges we dare to construct. It shows us that true wealth isn't measured in bank accounts, but in acts of compassion, integrity, and the courage to admit when we are wrong. Liam, who had so little, offered everything he had, while Eleanor, who had everything, had to lose control to find what truly mattered. Their journey teaches us that prejudice can shatter lives, but that empathy has the power to rebuild them in ways that are stronger and more beautiful than before. A simple knock on a door changed everything, proving that the most profound connections are often found in the most unexpected places. If Liam's story of integrity and Eleanor's journey of redemption touched your heart, please show your support by hitting that like button. Let us know in the comments what you would have done in Liam's situation. Share this story with someone who needs a reminder of the power of kindness. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories that inspire, uplift, and prove that there is still so much good in the world. Thank you for listening.